Florida today. The last 2 or 3 days I've been down to Key West. Real warm out there.
Oh, don't rub it in.
I'm jealous.
Just bring some of the sunshine back.
Oh, I'll try.
I mean, it hasn't been overly cold, but it's just been overcast.
Yeah.
A little bit yesterday,
Kevin, this is our new board member, Darlene Rousen. This is our attorney.
Nice to meet you. Never seen you.
I'm the ID.
Good morning, morning.
Morning.
Slipping
Ron,
in
you
or
thought
what?
you forgot about us.
How could I possibly do that? Well, I decided not to take the number 3 road.
Oh.
I don't like that road in the winter, there's no guardrails anyway.
Mhm.
So you just had to bounce off them or what?
Yeah, I need something to pumpers. So I took Route 12 and of course I pulled right out behind the state plow.
Oh, gotcha.
You did 35 miles an hour all the time or thereabouts.
Something like that, yeah.
What happened to the good old days when those guys used to fly about 50 miles an hour?
Not exactly.
Larry.
Something.
How you doing, Larry?
Doing good.
Good.
Walk by the coffee.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, they moved it around already.
All right, hello, how are you doing? So far, so good.
Put the knives back. How's that good thing? Just put the knives back.
Yeah.
What's new?
I didn't know. I mean,
Yeah, was that a board meeting
remember
the other
people
night?
that was
Very
Yeah,
positive.
I was stuck in the
It's supposed to
hallway.
be kind of a.
Well, I guess they learned you, huh?
Yeah,
Anyway,
Comedic outtake.
that was quite the showing.
330 something, I just said counted.
Pretty cool.
All alive and well.
Very serious.
Right around the sheriff.
I'm not worried. I'm not worried.
Yeah, he's a good actor.
Yeah, I got a phone call from one of your constituents yesterday. I had a hard time getting off the phone.
Mine or hers?
We don't,
It was a lady, she said, I don't recall her name, but she was from Lions Fall. She said, maybe, she was, anti, well, I won't say anti, but she was not in favor of sheriff.
It's the same one. I was on the phone with her for over an hour.
Okay.
I think she, well, she called me and she asked if this was Mr.
A long time ago, I went to the.
Somebody else. I never remember that kid's name, what's his last name? The attorney.
Oh, Gilbert?
I toured New York City.
Gilbert, God, I can't remember that. Yeah. I said, no, what are you looking for? Obviously, him.
Historically, side.
Not him, but, excuse me. Here does he know?
Youth group.
So anyways, I told her what it was, and she was one of the women to speak to me.
That service.
One that year.
Yeah.
Larry, how's Donna?
Effectively solving.
Just hopefully it gets out this morning.
Oh, she's still in.
Style.
So I may have to leave.
Just.
I can't believe they get her checked out before they
She's in the level, I said, you asked her. I'm from Watertown, really. Oh, you know, your wife's from Watertown, she, when she comes to Route 12, she doesn't even know how to turn left. You know what I'm saying? She turns right. They're virtually every day, so.
I get that. When you're from Copenhagen, we can talk about that.
We kind of lapsed.
Copenhagen car.
Okay.
It's basically, I think it's within feet of being the same distance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're a true Irish, you can get away from the damn English.
They were gonna get did you hear anything about this may sound crazy, of course, you know what I mean. Somebody told me they were gonna talk about putting a tractor.
But they're not placed yet.
Yes.
Interesting stuff.
What's that?
They're not placed yet.
Not Copenhagen, I'm sorry.
You think about it, it's kind of scary.
Right beside.
Charity Cox aren't placed yet. I was
There's not much left by this.
by their time, they're not.
They just put that one with the solar. panel.
You know where the snowmobile trail goes through?
Yeah, basically.
It's just 2 seconds.
Must be the town of Denmark.
Yeah.
Yes, it would, even Jefferson County, right?
No, not
Where's the Jefferson County line, right at the beginning of that little bit?
It's before you get to the red light, that's all I can tell you.
Yeah,
I remember watching Lewis County.
And I think it was, Barney's is in Lewis County.
and it would be, I think, it's that next.
That's where that show, that
That's
Dairy
only,
Girl.
I heard it.
That's all taking place while that's going on.
Yeah. Did that,
Well, I wasn't gonna have coffee, but since we're not doing a hell of a lot.
Seems like they have no,
Still have
they know that it's over here.
Oh, you go, geez.
it's a trick.
Yeah. Probably had to pay for it now.
How's it going?
Oh, is that right?
All right, well,
A little fast.
Trying to get to the meeting.
we are,
There's a difference here.
Nice park.
Hey, all right, which one's which one?
No, they're the same.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
probably might as well get going. Jared will probably be here in another 10 minutes or so.
As long as that beach chair.
All right, well, why don't we get started, and we'll do some introductions first since we have a new member here. So, you good? So, I guess you can start there.
All right, well, I'm Darlene Rumson.
Hello.
And I'm excited to be joining the board here. Did you want me to give a little background?
Yeah,
Sure. So lifelong Lewis County resident. I live in Copenhagen with my husband. We have 2 sons who also live in the Copenhagen area. I have been working at the Copenhagen Central School for the last 33 years. I'm the technology director there. This year, determined that this would be my final year there, so put in my intentions to retire in June, and was very anxious to involve myself in some sort of volunteer, I'm not sure, get involved a little bit more. My job hasn't really permitted a lot of time for that, so I'm looking forward to kind of serving in a different capacity. I will be retiring in June, as I said. Looking to probably continue employment past that, but in a little more of a flexible state, hopefully. My husband and I owned a fuel business in Lewis County for, first we bought it from my parents, we had it first, but we owned it for about 25 years. And have been owning some of it, my husband as well. So,
We're happy to have you on board.
thank you.
Kagan?
Oh, my name is Kagan Singh. I'm a financial planner for Key Investment Services. I've been in Lewis County for about 5 years now. My wife works at the hospital, and we live here because I want my children to have grandparents next door. Close by, but they happen to be next door, so. Which is good. I love living here. I love everything about this place. And I wanted to be able to contribute in some capacity, so that's why I'm on this board.
Shania Syria. I'm a finance technical specialist for the IDA. Currently kind of filling in for pilot incentives, all the other finance stuff that our former director did. Not a lifelong resident of Lewis County. I came all the way from Jefferson County when I was 6. So, my story's always been I never intended on coming back after college. Didn't think there was going to be anything for me to do here. I've been very, very pleasantly surprised by how much I want to be here.
You know who I am, right? So I've known Darlene for a long time. Her son is dating my sister.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Just wanted to disclose that
Sure.
right up front.
Hi, Ron Burns, living on the Steiger Road in Denmark. Very close to Hillbilly Heaven. I don't know why that's important. I'm sure it
Good
is.
point of reference.
Worked at Viking Snowplows up in Harrisburg for 34 and a half years, retired about 5 years ago, and was solicited by Mr. Shell at the time to run for legislature, and after some trepidation, I decided to do it. I was worried I'd get beat, because I said my ego is so fragile. If I didn't win, I'd be devastated, and he told me nobody's running against me. So I went for it.
Still almost got beat.
Yeah,
The advantage of being the write-ins.
if cows could write.
I'm Leonard Hall, I chair the Lewis County Board of Legislators. In that 8-year interview.
Yes.
I'm from Lyons Falls, been a legislator for, I think this is my 11th year, something like that, so. Been around for a while.
And a frequent guest and supporter of our meetings here, so. And involved in the Lewis County Development Corporation. We've talked already, so.
I'm Kevin McCardle, I'm the local counsel for the IDA. I'm 5'9"3/4", always wanted to be 5'10".
Deliver the news, but it's only gonna get less.
Thanks a lot.
Tim Peterson, I guess I work properties here for the most part and support Brit Shy and a lot of the work that they do. Part-time, slowly fading down in terms of the hours of contributing, but I hope to remain involved with what's going on here, because I very much want to continue involvement in economics in here in the county.
Jared Tiss, the vice chairman of this board, and work for Law Sport and Farm.
All right, so we had on the agenda that we might have a guest from US Light Energy, but we don't know anything further about that.
No, I wasn't sure that we were gonna have a guest necessarily, but we had opened it up to public comment.
Oh,
Just on the fact
that's
that,
right, I'm sorry. I forgot.
you know, that project is a deviation from our UTEP. So, doesn't look like anybody's here.
Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, Tom.
Uh,
Yeah, Tom's joining by phone, sorry about that. Go ahead, Tom, if you
Yeah,
wanna introduce yourself.
I can give you a little bit of what I'm up to. My name is Tom Gillette. I'm a retired dairy farmer. I farmed for 40 years and now I'm a real estate agent. And if you're into the light energy thing, I'm sort of representing Turin today. I've spoken with both the supervisor of Turin and the Doug Primo, the superintendent of South Louis, and both are 100% to go forward with it, so.
Thanks for relaying the message, Tom. Appreciate that. And sorry we forgot you were on the phone there. All right, so I'm sorry, Shai, I forgot that. So this was a opportunity if we had advertised for any public comment on
Are we supposed to have a hearing, or is it just public comment?
Just public comment.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it, I think.
we'll record what Tom had and no one else sees. Here. So can we have to,
No, that's it, you can just.
okay, okay. All right, so Brittany, the director's report.
Yep, so I provided you with, executive director's report for January. We have been very busy in the month of January. A couple of things that I want to highlight from last month. We've re-upped our contract with INCA, the Adirondack North Country Association, to be a partner liaison for the Center for Businesses in Transition program. So we've been a partner with that program for an entire year, and essentially, just for Darlene's background, it's a regional partnership that works to prevent the closure of existing businesses due to a lack of successor or succession plan. And we receive kind of a stipend to just be a part of this program. So this year, we've been awarded $3,900 to just do general work for the program, promote the program, meet with businesses, host seminars, et cetera. And then we've been awarded an extra $1,900 to do some extra work on Fort Drum. We found that Fort Drum is an untapped population for entrepreneurs. So there's people on base who are looking to stay in the North Country. So we want to be able to provide them with different business opportunities within the North Country if they're interested. This program, I would say, is one of the best examples of a regional partnership that I've ever seen or heard of, and it's actually getting national recognition, which is really cool. I think one of the best parts is just being able to partner and learn from other organizations throughout the North Country. So that was definitely a highlight. As far as pilots go, just an update, we've been receiving pilot payments from various wind, Johnson Lumber, and Shai is in the process of processing all of those payments to be sent out to taxing jurisdictions. And lastly, strategic planning process. We have over 100 registered people for the breakfast on Tuesday.
Holy cow.
Over 100, not including us as facilitators. So it's going to be a really great event. I mean, there's a lot of newer people that are attending that have never attended before, a lot of municipal board members who are interested, small business owners, agencies, nonprofits, people from Jefferson County even, who are just interested in what we're doing. So that's really exciting. And does anyone have any other questions on my report? Anything we've been working on?
I do have a few voting copies of the agenda if anybody needs them.
Alright. Anything else for Brittany?
Just a little comment, I guess, it's more off the record, but if you're looking for somebody that does a lot of business on Fort Drum, that is a kind of good contact, that might be able to give you some background information about how to get contracts going. There's a business from Beaver Falls, it's Phyllis Ferguson, Tom Ferguson's wife, runs a contracting business, a painting and contracting business. It's a woman-owned business, and they do a ton of business at Fort Drum, almost exclusively at Fort Drum. They're one of the most popular subcontractors of all the contracting things, because a certain percentage of the contracts, I guess federal and state, have to be through a minority or women-owned business.
Yeah.
And she's managed to create quite a business for us doing that. She'd be a really good contact for you if you want to get into the Fort Drum bidding system and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, Cheyenne sent out the minutes from the January meeting last week. Did everyone have a chance to review them?
Yes.
Any comments, corrections? Motion to approve.
Yes.
Second. Ron? All in favor? Motion carried. All right, and also included in that packet were notes from the Finance and Governance Committee meetings for everyone's information. Any questions on those? All right, financial reports, Jane?
We reviewed the financial reports, including the transaction list for December at the Finance Committee meeting. Not a ton of craziness. I mean, obviously, we're still dealing with the actuals to budget being really skewed by the lack of this building for the entire year. So other income line and other expenses line continue to be way off budget. but it was expected when we sold the building. And, really not a lot of other notables. We did sign, we continued to walk through the grant process for the $135,000 that hangs out in our accounts receivable line on the balance sheet. Signed the next step document and it's gone through all the approval process, so now it's just a waiting game to get the final okay to let that hit our bank account. So that'll go away. Kevin continues to work on NRG to try to collect from those guys because that's in our accounts receivable line. And we've moved a little bit forward with Bark Eater on at least a list of assets still available at that business to continue conversation about collecting something.
You didn't get the list?
Yeah, yesterday I came in, so.
Didn't the majority of that transfer to the current leasing?
The large
Yeah.
brewing system did.
This is the small one he had.
This is a smaller system, which is actually, not to get too far off topic, but it's if anybody had seen the brewing, their beginning brewing system with the barrels, it's not that system anymore. He traded it in for more of a lab kind of model that you might see in an academic situation, or it's you can brew like 2.5 gallons pretty quickly with it. And it's all automated. It looks like something you'd see in a lab. So that was a surprise when we went to look at it, but just means that maybe we'll be looking at a different customer if we do take possession of it. Maybe more of an academic situation or somebody who's just looking to test out their recipes at a small scale before they scale them up, because it apparently will allow you to scale up pretty easily.
There's a fair amount of bar stuff in there too. You had the chiller, the coolers for the kegs, that kind of stuff. So I think it's fair to say what's left in the bar facility is there. So it goes beyond just that equipment, but there's stools there, there's the kegerators, or whatever you want to call them, there's big 2 long refrigerators. There is one of the old funnel-shaped brew systems still there. We had multiples before.
Right, so yeah, some of it, I mean, is the refrigerators or coolers more or less, so we wouldn't have to specifically look to a brewery if we wanted to get rid of those things.
What's he owe? What's that? How much was that?
Between the lease, which we had kind of, once that transferred over to SKU, we hadn't focused on collecting on that as much. That one was about $10,000-12,000. And then the loan, which is termed, but he hadn't paid off in quite a while, that's another $10,000-12,000. So he lists the assets at about $20,000, whether we would agree with that or not is something to be figured out.
We'll continue to work with Kevin, figure that out.
It comes up once in a while from some of the legislators.
Yeah,
Why? They have nothing to do with that.
I mean, if there's anything they have zero to do with, it would be that.
He's offering that to convey that back in satisfaction of the debt. So if that debt's gonna be forgiven, this board's going to have to do that. So.
Right, and that's something, we still need to talk through whether we can forgive his personal.
Well,
The
the
lease
lease
part is
appropriations
that.
thing where we shouldn't be talking about this in open session to begin with.
Right.
It has to, this is, it's supposed to be a contractual, or negotiation of actually litigation too.
So,
so we can talk about this
well,
month.
if we'll talk about it, it needs to be an executive session.
Yes,
Right, and we just received the information yesterday, so we should probably hold on that for
yes.
a bit. So we were on December financial reports. Any questions, concerns?
In the budget,
Let's get a motion for
Oh,
the
sorry.
financials first.
I'll make the motion.
motion on the financials, Jared, second.
Sure.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. All right, sorry, non-budget.
Okay, the budget was reviewed by the finance committee. And just a couple highlights to point out. Obviously, the economic development line item from the county comes in on that at 186,000 and change. That we can probably work on breaking that down and what exactly we want that to be allocated to, but for the purposes of the ABO and Paris, we don't need to do that. The staffing line, obviously kind of still the compensation and benefits is still a little bit up in the air, just because we don't know what's going on quite yet with the executive director position. So I estimated high on the benefits side, assuming that whoever we hire is going to want the 401k or the simple IRA and health insurance. That may or may not be true, but I wanted to be conservative there to make sure we were covered. And that does account for Tim's time becoming less and less as well.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but some of you, okay.
We're gonna get to it.
And obviously a huge change from last year's approved budget because of this building. We did not budget in for a new building as of yet, just not knowing what that situation is going to work out with after strategic planning.
So, are we ready for any official action on that, or just?
We need to take official action so that I can submit it by the end of the month. The finance committee reviewed in a little bit more detail and recommended it for approval. So,
Anything else related to that? Motion to accept.
Motion.
Jared, second round. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Lionsdale.
All right, so Lionsdale property.
Is this executive session?
No,
I know.
there might be some issues to be discussed, but we can at least start it off here and see what we want to do. I got a surprise.
Oh.
Not a good one.
Okay. So Tim and Kevin have been working with Re-Energy on reviewing and revising contracts to terminate the pilot and the lease with Re-Energy to officially transfer the property to the IDA. I do have a copy of the termination of lease agreement and pilot if anyone wants to read through that word for word. So there's a couple of documents that we do have to approve to make a motion to sign in order to acquire the property today. That is the termination of the lease agreement, bill of sale, correct, Kevin? And then,
Well, they'll be signing the bill of sale conveying some personal property to us as well. And Tim understands what those things are, I have no idea what they are, some things on a hog.
A big one.
and then the third is acquiring the residential property. There are some post-transfer obligations that have been negotiated throughout the month. Essentially, Re-Energy is going to complete all actions needed with the DEC by June 30th. They're going to fill the holes of where the fire pump and the water pump were located.
There's some sort of pump system down by the generator, where the generator was. It's a cement hole, so it has to fill it in, so we don't have that.
Yeah, and then Re-Energy owned the interconnect equipment that's located on an easement that Twin Rivers owns. Essentially, they need to get consent from Twin Rivers first in order for us to have access to that easement. So we're not gonna be acquiring that equipment at this point until we work together with Re-Energy to gain consent from Twin Rivers. So essentially, we're just talking about the main piece of property, the buildings, the equipment that are located on that property.
Yeah,
So the easement wasn't transferable?
it can be assigned, but it's gotta go through this, Twin Rivers has to consent to it.
Right.
And then there's terms in there that need to be renegotiated. It's purely set up for steam and a power generating plant. It would need to be changed. The arrangement that we've worked with, Twin Rivers doesn't really want to talk unless you've got something truly to talk about today. So Bill and I have been discussing the easement and the equipment, and we've agreed that they'll essentially hold on to the equipment and the easement until there's something
Until somebody else cites there?
somebody else wants to utilize it. If not, they're gonna hold on to it, which means we aren't gonna have to deal with potential disposal, and returning stuff over a period of time. So the intent of the letter that it says they wanna transfer it, and we wanna transfer it. And as soon as we get the proper consents, it's all gonna get transferred, but in the interim, the way this thing is set up, they will hold it up until the point it transfers. So if it never transfers, it's their problem.
So we need to,
So are your surprises with the residential property or the,
The surprise is that there's an outstanding mortgage from 2005 from Lionsdale Biomass to a company called Central Hudson Enterprises. And it covers both properties. It covers, along with some other property too. I don't know if Lionsdale Biomass owns some property, it must be somewhere else. But this mortgage covers the residential property and the facility. And so we're going to have to get that cleared away before we're gonna finish this up.
Yep.
So,
okay.
But I think correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but I think we can go ahead and put approval on everything tentative upon this being cleared up, so that when it happens, we can just sign and go.
that would be very helpful because they want to get this wrapped up. And, but this is a glitch, so. I apologize, we were talking over here, but it's very possible that this is a 2005 mortgage and perhaps the paperwork wasn't properly filed to take care of it. We gotta get that answered before we go forward. So we would never be subject to paying back the $2 million. It's just that the property could be lost. We wouldn't be getting anything. We would just be basically getting the property, and then this company, Central Hudson Enterprises, would have a lien on it that we'd have to address and give it back to them or something like that. So we have to find out from Bill Ralston what the status is there. And I just found that out last night. I just got this is the abstract for the business property, and this is the abstract for the residential property.
so we would want to go ahead with the two motions that,
Yes.
for what Brittany mentioned, and then I would think if there's anything for executive section, it'd be more on the residential property side, but I don't know. I mean, we pretty much, we approved that last month to move forward, so I don't know if we need to do anything
Can we
else.
just do that in finance?
We just reviewed it in finance.
Oh, sorry, I got my meetings confused. All right, so what's our first motion?
To approve signing the contracts for the termination of lease agreement, pilot agreement, and the general release.
They can be done as one.
Yes.
Yep.
Do we have a motion? Ron? Second?
I'll second.
Jared? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. So now we need to,
Same type of motion, but now just for the residential property. And Tim has also provided in the packet a summary of price that we would sell it to the existing president. The finance committee reviewed this price and recommended that we approve this price at 20,000.
So there would be two separate, one would be acquiring the property and the other would be selling it.
Okay, so two separate motions.
Is he willing to do that?
That was his offer, right?
Yeah.
20,000.
Good.
Question, is the resident still interested in purchasing?
Yeah, we have a tentative agreement there, so we would acquire the property and turn around and sell it based on the tentative agreement we have there.
Sounds good.
The risk, so it's in the record, is that the property has an assessment, I think, of 24,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair market value minus what we have to put into it to get it up to that.
House gets a fair amount of work.
Right, I just want to make sure that the board understands that this is, there's always this fear of a governmental board making an illegal gift. You can't, because when this property comes into the IDA's possession, it is basically this quasi-governmental agency's property, and you can't make a gift of that property. So it's being sold for less than the estimated fair market value. But as Jared said, when you factor in the cost of transfer, it's actually very, very close to fair market value. So I think you can make a legitimate argument that it's really not a gift at all.
It's been provided some justification to that extent based on if we had the cost of listing it with a realtor, the cost of transfer, the cost of repairs. So if we factor that in, that $4,000 difference goes away pretty fast.
Well, I think the other side of it is too, it's part of our own policies, is it's also, I also look at it, I'm sure Kevin agrees with that, I look at it, it's an unusual circumstance, which they also cover. I mean, we're acquiring this thing as part of a bigger economic deal, and they tell you you can play around with prices when you're dealing with economic development type stuff. So this thing had to be in the midst of a bigger plan that, so either way, I think we're clear.
That's about 19,000 more than I expected.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the acquisition of it. That, based on the, I'm not looking at you, Ron, I'm looking at Brittany. Based on that we clear up this other,
If you want to identify the property, it's 7803 Lionsdale Road. And I'd help for the motion to say what property we're talking about, instead of just the residential property, that's the street address.
7803.
7803 Lionsdale Road.
Thank you.
so we need a motion to
acquire that.
To acquire that.
Yep.
Do we have a motion?
Sure. I'll go ahead and make the motion.
I don't know if you can do that, Tom, actually.
Yeah,
You have to be in person. But we had Goggin make the motion.
Denied.
We had a motion from Goggin. Do we have a second?
I'll say.
Ron, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Just curious, was this his first offer, 20,000?
Motion carried.
No,
It wasn't, right?
no.
To touch this mark.
All right,
Started at 15.
I'd take.
motion carried. All right, now we need a second motion to, sell the property at the,
Price.
agreed upon price for, as long as all the, as long as all the conditions are met.
Garbage clear out of there.
Yeah,
Right.
so, all right. Motion to sell it,
I'll make it.
Ron, second, Goggin, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. All
Very
right,
much.
All right, so now we have, the governance committee's been working on updating some of our policies. So we have a few of those that, they've, updated and are recommending for, official approval.
In the code of. Oh, go ahead.
So the code of ethics, this is the policy that we've reviewed probably 3 different times. And we think it's at a good state for approval.
At the governance committee meeting, we did have some discussion about including some conflict of interest language in there and ensuring that is done on a periodic basis. And I didn't have the document in front of me at the time, but we do sign the board does sign an acknowledgement of fiduciary duties and responsibilities once a year that doesn't address conflict of interest. So I think we were covered there. That was just one thing that kind of came up after the comments from last meeting that were taken into account at the governance committee meeting.
Any questions on that? We have a motion to approve the updated code of ethics. Darlene? A second?
Okay.
Jared?
Feel like you're at an auction today, like everybody gonna bid?
Second by Jared. Any discussion?
This is versus board of legislators.
Nobody's awake yet.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The real property acquisition policy, we found that that's kind of a required policy by the ABO. That's one that needs to be on our website. Our previous policy was more in line with our procurement policy, which is more for goods and services.
Good.
And didn't really address real estate. So I went on other IDA's websites and researched a little bit. Jefferson County had one that was recently reviewed October 2019. We saw them at the conference last week and we made sure they were okay with us basically copying and pasting it. And that's what you have, and the governance committee had in front of them and you have it in front of you now. It's very much in line with what we've been doing in our review of properties. But I thought it was pretty timely that we get an actual policy in place after we're going through this line sale.
Is there anything out there for selling properties as far as the policy, which this doesn't cover?
Right, that we are reviewing this month at governance.
And also at governance, there's reference to New York State Public Authorities Law and General Municipal Law. Jerry recommended that we just include references to what those laws are. So those are included in your packet, and actually it's very helpful as a board member of the IDA. It gives a really great review of, what your roles are as a board member. So just as a reference, that's what they're talking about in the policy.
Why were those things crossed off where it said, so this is a little bit further in the compensation and attendance policy, there's a reference to where those are those wrong, is that right?
Or, we can get to that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
All right, so real property acquisition policy, any other questions there? And as Brittany or Shai said, will be a discussion on a property sale policy as well.
Which we have a disposition of property policy, but that'll be the next one to be updated this coming month.
So, do we have a motion to approve the updated real property acquisition policy?
I'll make a motion.
Jared, second. Ron, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Compensation and attendance.
Yeah, so in regards to this policy, like Evan said, it makes reference to look in the LCIDA administrative manual under E 6.0. We have this very old manual, it's about this thick, probably about 15 years old. We just decided to take out those reference points because we need to update it. And so we're gonna be working with, to start Caitlin Smith at the county level, just to see if she can assist us with putting together a more modern employee manual. administrative manual.
I have another question.
Yes.
As far as, so when I read it yesterday, and again, it says, for attendance, it says an employee who excessively exhibits an unexcused absenteeism. How does the director determine that? Does the board determine that? Should that be defined in some capacity, or is this just normal? Right, who says it's excessive?
Isn't there a stipulation in the bylaws that say if you miss more than 2 meetings?
That's for employees, not the board.
Yeah, this is for-
No, yeah, this is like, who determines it? Is it
I
director
would
determine
say
that?
it would be the director.
Okay.
I think the board, if it was something with the executive director, the board would handle it.
Yeah.
If it's something with an employee, then the director would handle it.
So-
Because this is an operation.
Right, so should it define that, saying who excessively and then brackets as determined by the director of the board? Like, I'm not trying to get technical about it, I'm just saying, how does it?
Yeah, it makes sense. We can define that. So
Just
just
for the
anything
sake
with
of-
the director of the
Yeah.
LCIA board will
Yeah.
handle that. Anything with an
Employees,
employee,
director.
the executive director will handle that. Yes, we can add that.
Yeah, but back to his point, if you're gonna, excessive isn't gonna hold up if somebody is disgruntled.
Well, that's my worry, is like, if somebody says, well, what do you mean excessive, what's excessive?
We have vacation time policy, or I mean,
Well, I
that's
think
part.
that's why we need to update the administrative manual. Like Brittany said, it hasn't been touched in 15 years, and thank goodness we've never really had any issues that I'm aware of with.
My
those
worry
things.
is
That's why it
like,
hasn't been
yeah,
touched,
it can't be someone's opinion,
Right.
right? It's gotta be,
My,
You
and
took
I,
10
and
extra
I
days and now you got a
agree,
problem.
so the issue that, I mean, maybe we need to
Well, there's.
hold off on this, the issue that we don't have the HR manual to refer back to.
Yeah.
Because in my, the way I would read that as excessive would be defined by beyond, you use up all your,
Well,
vacation time and you, continue to take days type.
And when I worked at Craft, excessive meant if you did this so many times within a 12-month period, you're done.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's what it's like,
So-
even, right, it's gotta be some numeric, it's gotta be some number.
excuse that.
Or percentage or something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So do we need to look at this in terms of, or maybe hold on this until we have, we can reinstate the reference to an updated,
Yeah, we'll talk with Caitlin and just see if there's verbiage from a county handbook that we can add in.
She actually shared a little bit with me yesterday. It was yesterday afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to open it. And I've also got Tompkins County is apparently kind of in the same boat where their manual was really old too, and they're in the process of updating. And I've reached out to one other IDA just to be able to benchmark it and see what other people are doing, so we have reference points. So we should hopefully have something for governance this month, maybe next month.
so maybe we should just hold off on that one for now.
Yeah, one more question for you, Kevin, an HR manual or, let's just say supervised, does it cover short-term disability and long-term disability, and to what extent can that be okay? Like, I'm just curious, I don't know if those are even defined anywhere, because these things come up.
Well, yeah, it just started to come up because I started looking at a maternity policy. with
Okay.
you.
Right, I saw that, too, yeah.
So I was like, oh,
Okay.
maybe
So
we
some
should
work-
have one of those.
Some work to be done, yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so I think again with a good starting point is with the county HR, to see what we can learn from there. Shai mentioned Tompkins County has been doing updates. I mean, we've talked if it comes to it of actually like contracting with someone on the HR side to help us through this process, we may have to discuss that down the road, but at least we have some resources to start with. And, yeah, because I think all those things are, it's all relevant, guys, in that we've had, and, you know, and the staff has grown considerably in the last 4 years. So, you know, essentially there were 4 or 5 years ago, the staff consisted of 2 part-time people. So, so we have to think about that as the organization grows. So we'll table that one, I guess, for now, and then, the last policy is the defense and educational policy.
And this is totally just boilerplate.
Yeah, no changes have been made. We just need to review it and,
So the governance committee reviewed it already.
Yeah.
Didn't make any changes. Any questions there?
Thank you, Gary, just in response to your question, even though the opinion as it's drafted, the policy as it's drafted really comes down to an opinion of what is excessive, it's still better to have something in place than nothing.
Oh, I agree, yeah.
But it's, just going into the specifics of it is you're gonna go down the weeds and figure out where it goes, but you need to have something in place. So, but that's, and certainly, somebody who qualifies for disability under a benefit that you're offering, that's not gonna be excessive.
So do we have a motion to accept the defense and identification policy for the or the reauthorization, I guess, of,
Yeah.
of that? Darrell, second, Ron, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. All right, so that was our list of items for official approval. We can move on to the other agenda items.
all right. Just a quick update on IDA compliance. As you all know, we've been working with Barclay Damon, Melissa Bennett to help us with get up to date on our IDA compliance. Cheyenne and Tim have worked together to put together this awesome yet complicated flow chart on the pilot process. So this is the process of any pilot agreement from start to finish. On the top is the actual process. The bottom are the documents that we need for each step of the way. So essentially, as the IDA board, your job starts at the review phase. So step 7. There are some extra steps that we have added in there that we haven't previously been doing, but it's going to be really helpful and help us stay compliant and up to speed with the state, all the regulations the state has been putting on IDAs. And we felt that as a board, it would be helpful just for you guys to have this process. You don't need to know or understand really every step, but just so you know, when we do have resolutions and things to approve, you know what step we're on, what part of the project we're on.
Will this be like public information on the website and stuff?
This is more for internal purposes, just for our own, okay, we're on step 6. What do we need to do in step 6? So we're not scrambling like, oh yeah, we need to get this document. We know exactly what we have to do for each step.
Yeah, but there's a willingness to share it too, if some
Yeah,
other
I mean,
come along or somebody want to utilize it. It's not
Yeah,
secret.
even with the different taxing jurisdictions, so they understand that it's not just like a, yeah, sure, hand out the ticket kind of process, so that they understand, you know, this is where we're at in the process, and this is, we're doing the due diligence to make sure this is a legitimate project.
So we're gonna continue to work throughout this month, utilizing Melanie, some of her time at the chamber to get all of our project folders organized and the documents that we need scanned and put on our website. So we'll just continue with that process and we'll keep you guys posted on that.
Who made this?
I did show you.
Where'd you go? This is awesome.
Yeah,
Next thing is the Lewis County IDA app. Well, this is really good.
Like, part of my background,
No, this is
but I love
awesome.
going back and nerding out over.
It's-
I
it's
feel
the
emailing
same
me on
app
like
you
a
use
Saturday,
on
this is so
iPhone.
fun.
This is great.
Should have been an engineer.
Yeah,
Very helpful.
It'd be interesting to quantify how much time, effort, and cost is involved in satisfying the ABO.
it's a hot topic with economic development organizations.
You know, they just keep adding more staff
Yeah.
down there to justify their position and keep throwing out more and more stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot of,
Even doing this, like I hesitated to do it for the longest time because it was gonna take a lot of time to understand all the steps. And I was like, well, it's gonna save us time in the long run to understand
that's-
where we are.
Well, someone like, even myself, but someone like Darlene, when I started, it took a year to essentially figure out what was happening. This is great.
Yeah, it is.
And even for somebody applying at the IDA, if they could just have a this of the application process, how awesome to say, all right, this is what they,
Yeah.
that's great.
Like
Here's
a
the process. That's right.
forward-facing, public-facing
Yeah.
right.
equivalent.
Oh, you want
Yeah,
that?
it's a
little more
Right, well, no, seriously, like, there you go.
Yeah,
No conversation needed.
we could
Oh, you're
create,
not gonna be done?
we could, Darlene stated, we could create, a version for just public. You know, this is if you want to pilot, you know, this is a process that we have to follow.
Right, well, you're right, because that's a good point. I mean, the application phase, having that separated on its own sheet of paper
Yeah.
for someone interested, the review phase for municipal leaders that are questioning what steps we go through to make sure this qualifies as a pilot. They're probably most interested in the review, you know, maybe the adoption phase, but definitely the review phase, right? So we
I
could.
didn't fit it on the standard visa.
Yeah. Well, for the sake of targeted groups that are interested in different phases of this, it could be helpful that way.
So we'll keep you updated on our progress with that. But we're chugging along. And Kevin, hopefully this is helpful for you too.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
This is actually much easier to follow. If you look back in that brochure that the Harris Beach Law Firm put together, they have a chart like this in there too. And this is much easier to follow than their chart. There, that arrow is
Yeah.
going all over the place.
Yeah.
So we can
Some
sell,
of them are
we can sell
circular.
that.
This is
Proprietary.
Make this money, right?
copyright.
Copyright, yeah.
Any questions on that?
Yeah, well done, thank you. Anything else from a compliance?
Shai, will you send me, email me a copy of that,
Yeah,
please?
yeah.
I can share it with Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can share it with the BOL too, just
Yeah, that would be
let
good.
them be aware of how complicated the process is.
Melissa is also, she's still reviewing our bylaws, and making sure we have all the policies that we need on our site. So again, it's just going back to, there's a lot of work to be done with just making sure we're up to speed with what the state wants.
Bylaws and Utah, right?
And you perfect.
All right.
All right.
So, we'll go ahead, but, so there will be a few things that we'll probably wanna say for an executive session regarding staffing, but there's a few updates that we can do, without that, so.
Yeah, so in your packet, Tim provided you all with his letter of intent for his immediate role with the IDA and his future role with the IDA. Tim, I don't know if you want to explain a little bit more.
Well, I mean, I don't know how many of you remember, summer before last, I was gone for a good chunk of the time working on a proposal for a company I consult with. Well, we won the contract from the FAA, so it's a big one, about $450 million worth of, and they've asked me to come back and help support the program. I'd like to, because financially, it's good for me in the end. But I also say I don't want to not be involved with the IDA. I think I've agreed that I'm going to stay on to some level of hours to continue to help Brittany until the transition's put in place. You know, and at that stage, whoever the permanent director is and staffing discussions can go wherever they need to. If we need to hire somebody full-time and they don't require me around, I'm more than willing to accept that, in which case I'd say I want to be involved with the board or
committees or whatever, and I'll still come back in here and harass Brett and
Of course.
do things, you know,
So,
but, yeah.
yeah, I've asked him if he could stay on up to 5 hours a week just to finish out some projects that he's been working on. So like the Lionsdale property project, he's been the main contact for that. So just kind of seeing that through. You know, if and when we have more staff, just questions, and there's a couple of other things that he's been working on that he just needs to close out. So throughout this transition, up to 5 hours a week, and then once we kind of figure out executive director and another potential full-time staff member, then we'll figure out Tim's role.
Yeah, I mean, if there's skills I offer that you want to keep hold of and the new staff member doesn't have it, I'm willing to help out and come in. I'm not leaving. I mean, I'll be around working from home largely, fortunately.
So then with that said, with Tim reducing his hours, it's essentially just myself and Cheyenne. I'm the only full-time employee in this organization. Cheyenne's at about 30 hours a week. So I've created a
Do I fall in the excessive absence category?
maybe.
Is that why you still sit here a lot?
So I've created an organizational chart that I've been envisioning for this organization. Joe and I have talked about this. And the way that I see it, the Director of Economic Development will be chosen within the next 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how that works out. And of course, this is, you know, an awkward situation to kind of talk about, but however that works out, we hope to have another full-time person on board within 3 months. So whether that be an economic development specialist position or I step back into the marketing and communications position. So the intent is to have full-time executive director. Cheyenne will be at 30 hours and we'll have another full-time support staff. Whoever's in those roles to be determined. And then within the next year, you know, again, depending on who ends up where, we'll have another either part-time or full-time person to kind of backfill. Our issue is right now, it is just Cheyenne and myself, and of course we have IDA compliance programs like CDBG Micro Enterprise Grant Program, you know, visiting with businesses, the Business in Transition Program, you know, things that we really just need bodies, we need help with. We need to kind of just backfill, and we need someone to help us so that we continue moving forward. So this is the chart that I envisioned, and I think with the executive director search, it'll depend on who the other full-time person is.
So just as an outsider, where would Cheyenne be on that flow chart?
Director of Finance. Yes. I would recommend her to become Director of Finance and Incentive Programs.
So along we've talked that, you know, there's, with our contract with the county, there's kind of two aspects of, there's the IDA, the financial part, the pilots, and then there's our contract with the county for economic development. And I mean, it depends on the skill sets that we end up having, but, you know, a thought process being that the executive director has some of that focus outward on the economic development side, and the director of finance would still report to the executive director, but also have some level of oversight to the actual IDA, you know, the financial programs we run through the IDA. So this is a proposal that Brittany put together, and we did talk about it a little bit. You know, obviously there's a lot of moving parts, and we have to take a hard look at our finances to just see, as we've talked about all along, we want to have the level of staff here to support and really be functioning on all cylinders. But we also have to recognize you know, in the long term, what kind of financial commitment the staff is relative to what we project out. You may recall about 6 months ago, Eric and Shai put together kind of some long-term projections for the next 3 to 5 years. And we've had, you know, in terms of income from fees and stuff right now from pilots, they're pretty healthy because of the renewable energy activity. But if that slows down, and we look at our pilot activity outside of renewable energy, it's a much different picture in terms of where that revenue side would come from. It may, you know, but hopefully the renewable energy picture is, you know, pretty solid for a few years, and then that gives us time with our strategy, you know, depending on where the strategic planning process goes and a new home for us, and if that becomes a way to also generate some revenue through, you know, renting out space in our new home and that sort of thing. So, so we need to, you know, it's going to be a slow process, and it's a lot of burden on the 2 people we have right now. One thing we've talked, you know, this come up is, you know, we're kind of in, we don't want to lose the momentum we've had in terms of the big picture stuff, but we're also at a staff level where we're in a bit of a holding pattern, and the day-to-day responsibilities that have to come first are taking up all of the time and not necessarily allowing for the more, you know, the more progressive parts of our vision. So obviously that's temporary, and you know, regardless of what happens, that was anytime you lose a person, that there's bound to be a bit of that transition, right? So we certainly recognize that, but hopefully we can get back up to running on all cylinders again and look at what we really feel comfortable with budgeting for the long term.
Yeah, and definitely some of the roles are shifting. So Eric, as the director, was finance and incentives, but that's the way we run this organization is going to shift. And so we need the staff to support that. So we're not really looking for an approval or anything, but we are going to be reviewing an economic development support specialist position, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks or within the month post that to.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where we need to be thinking about this stuff, but the pieces have to come in order. So the first piece is the director, and that will affect where we go from there. However, getting our ducks in a row, not waiting until that decision is made to figure out the next step, to the extent that we can plan ahead, is also, you know, will also be helpful in moving the process along.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, kind of understanding that depending on who that executive director is, and what ends up being defined as their role. And this isn't complaining, this is just, let's recognize that if it's a new person in that position, it's going to be more of a burden for a few months for Brittany and I to train that person. So I don't.
I mean,
That's just what it is.
not just, you know, not to speak on behalf of everyone, but from my perspective, it is what it is, and we just have to recognize that we're in a bit of a holding pattern, and that's just the nature of, it's not that anyone's not doing, they're working their butts off to keep things going, but we have to get through this transition period. So I guess personally, I'm not worried about a slowdown and, you know, just attending to the stuff that needed to be attended to in the short term.
If the long range stuff takes another 6 months to get done, it's
Right.
not gonna break the bank.
And this, you know, I mean, hopefully this is all, hopefully this is all,
You gotta be thinking 15 years, Shai, not 15.
I know.
yeah.
Oh, we are.
And So, and the other part of this is the strategic planning process, because in theory, this all dovetails, kind of merges back together, right? We get a new team member on board, we have the strategic planning process, and that gives that gives a level of confidence for all of us that we have the public buy-in to really, we're kind of jogging right now, and it's a lot easier to get back up to running from jogging than from standing still, right? So we're jogging a little bit, but we're definitely not standing still. And hopefully these two processes of rebuilding our team and the strategic planning stuff comes together, and then it's really a quick transition back up to running with some, some level of, I don't know what the right term to use, but public kind of understanding of, that we've looked at what's in the strategic planning process, and that's given us kind of, some of the direction to where we're running from there, so.
Any other questions on that? All right, it's 9:10, so I would like to stick to the 9:30 deadline.
So so there is the last two things on the list. We'll skip over one and just say that we'd all need to sign. Cheyenne has a form for us to sign that we've had to sign annually. So you can, if you need to take it and review it, go ahead, but we do need those back soon. And then in terms of the executive director search, I would propose that we go into executive session in a minute here, but just a quick update is we did close down the application window. We've reviewed the applications that came in, and I shared with the board a few days ago the ones that we felt met some criteria to review and move forward with considering. So with that, I think it would be appropriate to go into executive session to talk more specifically about that process.
Personnel matters.
Personnel matters.
I'll make the motion.
Jared, have a second. Goggin, all in favor? Aye, okay, so I guess I'm not, I think, Larry, I think if you want to stay for a little update, that's okay. But from a staffing standpoint, I guess we'd like to have the staff leave for the time being. Probably not.
It's